You know, from time to time, we'll see on the news a very familiar scenario where someone has committed a terrible crime, and the news people will converge on that person's neighborhood or school or workplace, and they stick the microphones into the family members or the neighbors or the co-workers' faces, and the people will always say, what do they always say? He was just such a quiet person. There's no way I could have ever imagined this. She loved her children. She would never, ever have hurt her children. There's always this tremendous sense of shock and bafflement. The wife never suspected a thing. The guy was a Boy Scout troop leader. He was a deacon in his church. There's so much denial then, too. He couldn't have done that. She could never have done that until we find out, of course, they did do that. Well, I promise you that if and when, God forbid, reporters ever come to my door in such a similar situation, I will never say, I'm shocked. I will never say, she could never have done that, he could never have done that, because I'm a minister. I work with human beings, and I am one myself. And therefore, I will always say, as the Roman playwright Terence said over 100 years BC, I am a human, and therefore nothing human is alien to me. Everyone is capable of pretty much everything, until proven otherwise. And you know, I don't know what I'm capable of either. I don't mean to say this in a threatening way, though, to suggest that everyone's a devious character who's hiding a terrible secret or living a double life. I don't want to incite paranoia at coffee hour. It's just that most people are complicated and we wear many faces. As I told the children, the word persona, from which we get our word personality, is Latin for mask. The traditional masks of comedy and tragedy come to us from the classical Greek theater, although masks have been used ceremonially in many, many cultures and religions. And in many of those religions, including ancient Greece and Rome, the heavens, the earth, and the underworld were populated with many gods and goddesses, deities whose attributes, good, bad, ugly, magnificent, were reflected in human character and personalities. Psychologist Carl Jung, one of my mentors, said that losing the old gods has actually impoverished our psychological understanding of the self. And I agree. Think of the language we use to express psychological and spiritual health. We say things like wholeness and integration, the idea of fragments coming together as one thing. We say things like unity of being. We say, in the monotheistic religions, God itself is one. So one is holiness. But look at reality itself. Look at creation. Creation isn't one unified thing. It is constantly changing, evolving, involved in a profound and commanding drama. So, while I don't literally worship the old gods, I honor them. They remind me that every one of us is participating in an unfolding drama with our own internal cast of characters. And sometimes you'll hear that cast of characters in your mind. I like to call them the committee. What we call the self is constantly evolving and shifting, No person is one thing that can be summed up in a clear and short way that comforts those who want to know who they are. But note how we try. Who is she really? Who is the real Hillary Clinton? Who is the real Donald Trump? Who is the real Kim Kardashian? There is a celebrity magazine that has a feature called Stars, They're Just Like Us, where you get to see Britney Spears pumping gas in shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops, or you see George Clooney at the end of his driveway in pajamas picking up his newspaper. Who are Brad and Angelina really? How can she be a sexy siren movie star and a nurturing mother? What is she hiding? How can she have said those things 24 years ago and say something else entirely different today? Suspicious. People change. How can he treat women like that and yet love his daughters? Because people are complex. Human beings are mysteries to each other and to ourselves. We cannot be reduced to a clear description. It is not fair or accurate to categorize ourselves or others that way. We contain multitudes. Walt Whitman. I'm very interested in how this truth plays out in a time when coming out has been so important and liberating a process for so many, and discomfiting to others. Many people who have felt constrained and constricted by being expected to be one thing and to conform to society's expectations and traditions have cast off those shackles and claimed identities that are new, that are freeing, genderqueer, fluid, multiracial, post-feminist, and those go along with the labels like millennial. I am an elder, baby boomer, feminist, conservative, radical, libertarian, vegan, neuroatypical, instead of the old stigmatized label mentally ill or mentally challenged. These identities are numerous and the labels are always changing. By our labels, we may choose to be known, but by our labels, we cannot really know each other or ourselves. They may be helpful social constructs for people to use as a way to disrupt assumptions. I'm not who you think I am. And to form supportive alliances. Let me claim this identity so I can find others who may also claim it. But they are not a solution to the ultimate mystery and multiplicity of each human life. Most labels can never do full justice to the ways you and I slip in and out of selves and roles through our entire lives, and sometimes several times within one day. I might start my day as a concerned daughter and transition to responsible religious leader by mid-morning, and then regress to insecure fourth grader at lunchtime. Spend a few hours as a contemplative mystic, shift to busy administrator or pastoral companion, go home and become a raging Medusa feminist warrior, and then end my day as a little sister giggling with my sibling. As I dream at night, other selves emerge in dreams to alert me to what else might be going on in my psyche that has been unacknowledged during my waking hours. You too are always moving in and out of roles, putting on those masks that help us navigate social and professional interactions. So we begin to understand that the integration we seek as spiritually healthy and aware people is not a reduction into one smiling, happy, acceptable person that achieves wholeness and enlightenment and never changes. It is to honor all that we are, to bring all that we are to awareness, to respect our many selves, to cherish our multiplicity and complexity. What we aim for is not to arrive at some final destination of, again, smiling enlightenment, but to recognize, befriend, understand, and accept our multiple selves and roles, and respect and have compassion for their reasons for being in us and of us. Every mask you wear, every persona you possess, wise elder, wounded child, raging addict, sex goddess, wild rebel, pompous professor, insufferable diva. Each member of your internal cast of characters is you. Best to know all the cast so we can take responsibility for each one of them and retire some of them when the time comes. If they go kicking and screaming, we may know that there's something of great value in them. The real danger comes when there are unacknowledged aspects of ourselves that we cannot accept or even investigate. Jung was particularly concerned with this rejected material, which he called the shadow, and warned that if ignored, it would be projected onto others. The church has historically been a place where humans can collectively recognize the shadow aspect of the psyche and acknowledge it in ritual, prayer, conversation, and private reflection. In litanies, we may confess to it. But the church has also been an organization that has engaged in a lot of projection and scapegoating. So it seems to me, then, that the most ethical religious community of today is one which supports individuals in the eternal quest to know thyself, shadow side and all, and then equips each person to identify and fight against projection and scapegoating beyond its walls. We are such complex beings. Here's what I think about when I think about the masks we wear in community. In 2005, J.J. Jameson, who was a devoted longtime member of Third Unitarian Church in Chicago, he was an anti-war activist and celebrated poet. He was a good neighbor, beloved friend to many, was outed, you could say, as Norman A. Porter Jr., a fugitive from Massachusetts, who had murdered 2 men and was serving 2 life sentences when he escaped and reinvented himself in Chicago. State troopers arrested him in the church office of the Third Unitarian Church in Chicago. Being in community is an act of faith. Was the real man JJ, and was Norman the mask? Or was the man who committed murder the real self and JJ the mask? It is not for me to say, and I am glad I am not in a position to have to decide that. I suspect that all of those things are true, as they always are. More often, though, and I don't mean to scare you, everybody's going, ooh, who's the JJ here? I don't want to ever scare you because more often it's like this. There is, for example, a doctor in the congregation, quiet person, ordinary, sometimes lovely and friendly, sometimes cantankerous and quarrelsome. And that person passes away. Her children, going through her desk to find the necessary papers and documents, discover that she has several desk drawers full of carefully filed checks from patients that were quite intentionally saved and never cashed. You get the implication of that, right? She has been practicing medicine for free, pro bono, and no one ever knew. Sometimes the masks hide something sinister, but I will tell you something, much more often, the masks hide something shining, beautiful, generous, admirable, a self so tender and giving that to behold it might break you open and birth another self within you of equal beauty. It is in this possibility that we gather, and it is in this possibility that we abide in community with all ourselves.